In New Jersey, everything seems larger than life. The Jersey Shore, Atlantic City, Frank Sinatra. Even greater are the mysterious folklore and urban legends that drift through the night skies above the Hudson River. Across the river from Manhattan, perched high above the Palisade cliffs and overlooking the breathtaking New York City skyline sits North Bergen, New Jersey, a town long associated with strange sightings and unexplained UFO phenomena dating back to the early 1970s. At the center of one of the most intriguing cases is North Hudson County Park, a breathtaking urban oasis built around a shimmering artificial lake, which is home to countless species and migrating wildlife. However, beneath the calm atmosphere and quiet nature trails lies a mystery that has fascinated UFO researchers for decades. Adjacent to the park's baseball field stands the iconic Stonehenge building, its unmistakable architecture forever linked through proximity and local lore to the night an alleged unidentified craft descended onto this field on a cold 1975 wee hour morning. It was here that North Bergen resident George Obarski reported witnessing one of the most compelling UFO encounters in New Jersey's history. Today, we'll revisit the alleged landing site, as well as attempt to unravel the many enduring questions surrounding the North Bergen Stonehenge UFO incident. On this special edition of Tri-State Journal. Every once in a while, we hear stories about mysterious unidentified flying objects traveling over vast cornfields or barren arid regions. However, the last place you would expect this phenomenon to occur would be here, in good old New Jersey. Enter North Bergen, New Jersey's James J. Braddock Park, built by the Hudson County Park Commission in 1910 and formerly known by its official name of North Hudson County Park. This pleasing wildlife refuge is a relaxing environment for people of all ages. It is also a welcoming hub for its native and migrating wildlife that make this ecosystem their home. The park was co-named in honor of the 1935 World Heavyweight Boxing Champion James J. Braddock, who was also known in the boxing ring as the Cinderella Man. Say the word UFO in North Bergen, New Jersey, and the Stonehenge incident will immediately enter into the conversation. Today, we'll explore this fascinating story of a man and his eyewitness account of a close encounter with a spaceship occupied by living beings from another world. We're going to devote this article and accompanying video documentary to the UFO eyewitness account of George Obarski, a North Bergen, New Jersey resident whose experience and documented account has inspired generations of UFO enthusiasts and researchers all across the globe. Today, we'll explore the many elements of this fascinating story. On a modest residential neighborhood in North Bergen, New Jersey, lies a park and wildlife reserve with a unique story, one that resembles a sci-fi episode straight out of the Twilight Zone. If you have been around alien and UFO lore long enough, you've probably heard of the Stonehenge incident. This was an unidentified flying object apparition that occurred in 1975. It's important to note that the acronym UFO is an old scientific term that today might be referred to as unidentified anomalous phenomena, which was also previously categorized as unidentified aerial phenomena. In this context, we'll just use the original term UFO, which was a relevant acronym to the era when these events occurred. The story begins on a cold, early morning of January 12, 1975, when a man named George Obarski traveled home from his small liquor store business located in New York City's Chelsea district. George Obarski had made this trip back home to New Jersey hundreds of times over the years, but on this particular night, things would happen that would forever change his life. As George Obarski made his way home to New Jersey through the Lincoln Tunnel, up the Palisades, and into North Hudson Park's Riverview Drive, his radio began to exhibit a strong static interference. As he reached for the radio dial to change it to another station, he was immediately startled by a strong bright light, which passed over his car at a very low altitude while emitting a very low audible hum. He became so overwhelmed with fear that he simply froze and just watched as an apparent aircraft landed on the east side of North Hudson Park's baseball field. As he observed the craft hover over the ground, he also noted its dimensions and other important details such as windows and a hatch which suddenly began to open. As the hatch opened, Obarski claims that a dozen small creatures about 3 feet in height and dressed in metallic white suits began to exit the craft. They quickly and methodically began to scoop up soil samples from the immediate area where they had landed. And just as quick, they exited, returned to the aircraft, and darted off into the night. George Obarski was extremely shaken by this experience, and recounts that he was sweating with fear and thought he was going crazy. Obarski had been robbed at his liquor store many times over the years and says that he was used to extreme situations, but nothing prepared him for that night, as that encounter genuinely frightened him. Bud Hopkins, a local New York City reporter who frequently patronized George Obarski's business and was also a close friend, interviewed and audio recorded Obarski recounting his experience. Hopkins also interviewed the door attendant of the ubiquitous Stonehenge building, which stands right across from James J. Braddock Park. He verified the UFO incident, as well as the broken window, which was damaged by an alleged strong beam of light that emanated from the craft. This account coincided in exact detail with what George Obarski had seen. Details of this story were published by Bud Hopkins in New York City's The Village Voice newspaper, entitled "Sane Citizen Sees UFO." Hopkins also noted that a family who lived a few blocks away from the park had also seen the same unidentified flying object. Obarski and Hopkins noted that when they returned to the park the next day, they saw large imprints on the section of the baseball field where the aircraft had apparently landed. George Obarski was considered a practical and respected man in his New Jersey community, as well as in his Chelsea business neighborhood. He showed little interest in trivial matters or subjects of unproven conspiracies or foolishness. Friends and community members said that this integrity had made him a truthful man of honor for over 70 years. It really bothered Obarski that people might have thought that he was lying about his UFO encounter. Over the past 4 decades, many UFO sightings and strange aerial apparitions have been documented in and around the Hudson County area. One very intriguing UFO sighting occurred on July 6, 1986, near the Stonehenge Apartments. Witnesses described seeing a large oval-shaped object that was, quote, unidentifiable, not moving, did not have any sound, and simply hovered over the Hudson River, unquote. As the object kept itself stationary over the river for about 10 minutes, eyewitnesses say that it quickly darted south in an accelerated fashion that does not resemble any aircraft we are used to seeing. These same eyewitnesses also said that shortly after this encounter, military jets were seen flying in the same direction in pursuit of the unidentifiable craft. Most local residents and eyewitnesses to the July 6, 1986 event decided not to talk about the incident to the press for fear of being labeled conspiracy theorists, UFO fanatics, or people who merely spoke irrationally. Over the years, many other eyewitnesses described seeing metallic and triangle-shaped objects, as well as strange light patterns and other unexplained phenomena in the airspace that covers the North Hudson County area, adding to the continuing lore and mystery of this fantastic region. This leads one to ask, is this all just science fiction imagination of a creative mind? Or is it simply a biblical foretelling of things to come? According to North Bergen historian Michael Maring, who is directly credited for compiling and researching a long-running collection of UFO reports, found that the first sightings were originally centered around the area of Woodcliff and North Hudson Park, beginning in 1948. In this particular undocumented case, a police officer described seeing unusual lightning coming from North Hudson Park. Michael Maring states that for unknown reasons, this particular incident was never formally investigated or officially documented on the public record. As fate would have it, this 1948 case would later become the starting point of reference for a decades-long study of similar UFO reports in the area. Meyering concluded that by the early 1970s, sightings became more frequent and more defined, with reports of rotating white lights near the now-defunct Penn Central Railroad Depot, as well as a color-changing object seen moving through the sky above Riverview Drive in the direction of the George Washington Bridge, before eventually disappearing. This suggests a recurring presence of unexplained aerial phenomena across the entire Hudson waterfront, extending further north and beyond the Fort Lee region. As cited in Meyering's YouTube presentation, the subsequent decades after 1970 describe a noticeable escalation in observable aircraft detail and frequency. Reports say that a family living near Boulevard East witnessed a large hovering craft with multicolored lights that was emitting an audible humming sound as it slowly moved along the Hudson waterfront. This was followed shortly after by a separate but similar encounter inside North Hudson Park, where a saucer-shaped object reportedly landed and released small humanoid figures that collected soil samples, then just as quick vanished into the night. This account is attributed to George Obarski and was previously described in detail earlier in this article. Around the same period, additional reports from the Stonehenge building area and nearby parks describe bright hovering objects in the skies, sudden radio interference, windows vibrating, and even physical objects such as the breaking of glass, as well as trees being destroyed by numerous unexplained lightning phenomena. Multiple unrelated witnesses in the mid-1970s also independently describe similar types of craft hovering over the Hudson River banks, with some appearing to land briefly before quickly ascending and vanishing into the clouds. Commonly, local police generally and historically respond and treat these events with much skepticism and disinterest. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, the pattern of UFO sightings continued throughout North Hudson Park, with some eyewitnesses even sketching and giving testimony describing disc-shaped objects surrounded by structured windows and smooth, silent movements darting or hovering across the New York City skyline west of the Hudson River. In the decades that followed, Additional sightings continued to be reported intermittently into the 2000s and 2010s, extending even into 2020, forming a long and loosely connected timeline of unexplained aerial observations in the region. While many of these incidents cannot be reasonably attributed to drones, modern aircraft, atmospheric conditions, or misidentified natural lightning phenomena, others remain harder to categorize. Some assessments by religious groups even draw comparisons to descriptions of chariots of God in ancient biblical texts, as well as vimanas in several ancient Sanskrit epics and Hindu texts. This leaves the overall phenomenon open-ended and subject to ongoing speculation and philosophical interpretation. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of this segment. But if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, or if you want to see more of this type of content, please feel free to let us know in the comments section. That's it for this special edition. My name is Eduardo Rivera. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you here next time on another edition of Tri-State Journal.